I should have seen it coming when my wife started working nights at that luxury hotel, but sometimes you're so busy surviving that you miss what's dying right in front of you. My name's Rudolph, and for 15 years I thought I knew exactly who I was married to. Louisa and I met back when we were both serving tables at a diner in Fort Worth, young and stupid enough to believe love could carry us through anything. We had 2 kids, Emma and Marcus, 12 and 9 years old. Beautiful kids. Smart. They deserved better than what was coming. 3 months ago, I lost my job at the manufacturing plant. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I couldn't keep my mouth shut when management tried to pin a safety violation on Rodriguez, one of the line workers. He had 4 kids and a sick wife. The violation wasn't his fault, it was faulty equipment, and I had the emails to prove it. So I spoke up. 2 weeks later, they found a reason to let me go instead. Corporate justice, they call it. Louisa took it hard. We'd never had much money, but losing my income meant we were suddenly drowning. She picked up extra shifts at the Riverside Grand Hotel, where she worked as a concierge for VIP guests. Rich people who dropped more on a weekend stay than we made in a month. She started coming home later and later, always with some excuse about demanding clients or special events. I was sending out resumes during the day, taking care of the kids, trying to hold everything together. Pride's a funny thing. It keeps you warm at night when you can't afford to heat the whole house. The changes started small, so small I convinced myself I was imagining things. Louisa had always been patient with the kids, even after long shifts. She'd come home tired but still ask about their day, help Marcus with his spelling words, listen to Emma's stories about school drama. But somewhere around week 3 of my unemployment, that patience evaporated. One evening, Marcus accidentally spilled juice on the kitchen floor. Just a small spill, the kind that happens when you're 9 and distracted. Louisa exploded. Not the normal frustrated parent reaction, but something harder, colder. She snapped at him with a viciousness that made him flinch, told him he was old enough to be more careful, asked him why he couldn't do anything right. I cleaned up the spill while Marcus ran to his room, and when I gently suggested she might be overreacting, she turned that anger on me. "Of course you'd take his side," she said. "You're here all day doing nothing while I'm working myself to death. Maybe if you could keep a job, I wouldn't be so stressed." The words hit like a slap. I'd been fired for doing the right thing, and she knew it. But there was something in her voice I'd never heard before, a contempt that felt personal and practiced, like she'd been rehearsing the sentiment. She apologized later that night, blamed exhaustion, but the apology felt hollow. Like she was sorry I'd heard it, not sorry she'd thought it. The irritability became a constant presence in our house. Simple questions about her day were met with sharp responses. "Why do you need to know?" Or, "I already told you, weren't you listening?" She'd snap at Emma for leaving her backpack in the hallway, at Marcus for talking too loudly, at me for existing in the wrong room at the wrong time. I started walking on eggshells in my own home, and I could see the kids doing the same. We'd exchange glances when Louisa's car pulled into the driveway, a silent communication that meant be careful, be quiet, don't set her off. But it wasn't just the anger. There were other things, subtle shifts in the woman I'd married. Louisa had never been particularly concerned with appearances beyond basic hygiene and looking professional for work. She'd wear jeans and t-shirts around the house, pull her hair into a messy bun, skip makeup on her days off. Comfortable, she used to say. Real. Now she was spending an hour in the bathroom every morning before work, even though her shifts often didn't start until afternoon. New makeup appeared on our bathroom counter, brands I'd never seen before, expensive ones judging by the packaging. Her hair, which she'd kept in a simple shoulder-length cut for years, was suddenly highlighted and styled differently. She'd come home from work with her nails done, professional manicures that must have cost money we didn't have. When I asked about it, she got defensive. "I have to look professional for the VIP guests," she said. "Presentation matters in hospitality. You wouldn't understand." The implication stung. I wouldn't understand because I wasn't working, because I'd lost my job, because I was somehow less than her now. Her phone became an extension of her hand. She'd always been casual about it before, leaving it on the kitchen counter while she cooked dinner or played with the kids. Now it was always with her, always face down, always protected. She'd take it to the bathroom, sleep with it under her pillow, angle herself away from me when she was typing. One Saturday morning, I picked it up when it buzzed with a notification, intending to hand it to her. She practically lunged across the room to snatch it from me. "Don't touch my phone," she said, her voice sharp with panic she tried to disguise as annoyance. "I was just bringing it to you." I don't care. It's mine. My privacy. Can't I have anything that's just mine? The overreaction told me everything I needed to know, even if I wasn't ready to admit it yet. Our bedroom became a war zone of silence. Louisa started going to bed hours after me, claiming she wasn't tired, needed to decompress from work. When she finally did come to bed, she'd stay on the far edge of the mattress, as far from me as possible without actually sleeping on the floor. The casual intimacy of 15 years, the unconscious way we'd always gravitated toward each other in sleep, disappeared completely. When I tried to initiate any kind of physical contact, even just holding her hand or putting an arm around her shoulders, she'd stiffen and pull away. I'm tired, Rudolph. I've been working all day. It became her standard response to everything. Too tired to talk, too tired to spend time together, too tired for any connection that might remind her she was still married. The lies started piling up like unpaid bills. She told me she was working a double shift, but I drove past the hotel and her car wasn't in the employee lot. She said she had a mandatory training session on her day off, but when I mentioned it to Danny later, he looked confused and said there hadn't been any training scheduled. She'd come home at 2 a.m. claiming a VIP guest had an emergency, needed her to coordinate something urgent. At 3 a.m, really? But when I questioned it, even gently, she'd turn it around on me. What? Are you tracking me now? Don't you trust me? The guilt trip worked for a while. I was unemployed, she was carrying the financial burden. Maybe I didn't have the right to question her. Maybe I was being paranoid, insecure, controlling. She had a way of making me doubt my own perceptions, my own reality. But the kids noticed too. Emma asked me one afternoon why Mom was so mean now. Marcus started avoiding Louisa entirely, spending more time in his room when she was home. They'd used to run to the door when she came home from work, excited to see her. Now they barely looked up. I found a credit card statement in the mail that Louisa had apparently forgotten to hide. Charges I didn't recognize, expensive restaurants I'd never heard of, a boutique clothing store in downtown Fort Worth, a jewelry shop. When I asked her about it, she snatched the statement from my hand. It's for work, she said quickly. I need to look the part. Some of these charges are for client gifts. It's expected in my position. But we were barely making rent. We'd had conversations about cutting back on groceries, about telling the kids they couldn't do extracurricular activities this year because we couldn't afford the fees. And she was buying jewelry? The final straw, the moment I knew something was fundamentally wrong even before I knew what it was, came on a Tuesday evening. I'd made dinner, nothing fancy, just spaghetti and salad, trying to do something nice. The kids were at the table, telling me about their day, and when Louisa walked in, I smiled and said dinner was ready. She looked at the table like I'd served her garbage. I already ate, she said flatly. You did? When? At work. We had an event. Lots of leftover catering. But there was no warmth in her voice, no appreciation for the effort, no acknowledgement that I'd tried. Just irritation that I'd expected her to participate in family dinner. She went straight to our bedroom and shut the door. I heard the shower running, saw the light under the door until late into the night. When she finally came out, she was wearing new perfume, something I'd never smelled before. Sweet and expensive and completely unlike anything she'd ever worn. That's nice, I said, trying to bridge the distance between us. Is that new? A VIP guest gave it to me, she said without looking at me. Said I should have nice things. The way she said it, like nice things were something I could never provide, something she deserved from strangers instead of her husband, made something crack inside me. That night, lying in bed with a wife who felt like a stranger, I finally admitted to myself what I'd been avoiding for weeks. Louisa wasn't just stressed. She wasn't just overworked. She wasn't just taking out financial frustration on her family. She was somewhere else. Her body came home, but her mind, her heart, her attention, those were somewhere else entirely. Someone else entirely. The question wasn't whether something was wrong. The question was how wrong, and what I was going to do about it. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, listening to Louisa's breathing beside me, and knew that whatever came next, our marriage as I'd understood it was already over. I just didn't know the details yet. Then Danny called me. Danny worked security at the Riverside Grand, had been there for years. We'd grab beers sometimes, talk about sports, complain about life. His voice was different that Tuesday afternoon, careful and uncomfortable. Rudolph, man, I don't know how to tell you this, he said, but you need to know what's going on. My stomach dropped before he even finished the sentence. It's Louisa. There's this guest, been staying at the hotel for 6 weeks now. Business guy John something. High roller, penthouse suite. She's been spending a lot of time up there. Too much time. And Rudy, I've seen them. In the parking garage. They weren't talking about room service. I thanked Danny and hung up. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped the phone twice trying to set it down. Part of me wanted to storm into that hotel right then, but I had something more valuable than rage. I had time, and I had suspicion, and I had nothing left to lose. That night, while Louisa was in the shower, I took her phone. She'd gotten careless with her passcode, or maybe I'd just been paying more attention lately. I installed tracking software, the kind parents use to monitor their teenagers. Took me less than 3 minutes. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched her movements on my laptop like I was studying a map to buried treasure. Every night she told me she was working late. That dot on the screen stayed stationary on the 20th floor of the Riverside Grand. Penthouse level. John's level. I found the text messages next. She'd been deleting them, but she didn't know about cloud backups. Hundreds of messages. Promises about a better life. Photos I couldn't look at for more than a second. Plans. This John character was filling her head with fantasies about private jets and European vacations, the kind of life a concierge only gets to watch other people live. But here's what twisted the knife deeper. She wasn't leaving me for love. She was leaving me for money. For a lifestyle. For champagne and penthouse views. She told John the First was deadweight, that she'd wasted her best years on a man with no ambition. That the kids would be better off once she upgraded her situation. The rage I felt wasn't hot. It was cold, calculating, patient. I started documenting everything. Screenshots, location data, timestamps. I created a file that would make any lawyer weep with joy. But I didn't go to a lawyer yet, because I wasn't ready for the obvious ending to this story. John was married too, I discovered. Wife and 3 kids back in Dallas, while he played bachelor in Fort Worth during his extended business trip. His wife's social media was full of photos of their mansion, their boats, their perfect life. Her name was Catherine. I also learned that John owned a chain of medical supply companies. Legitimate businesses, successful ones. He was exactly the kind of man Louisa thought would rescue her from our struggling middle-class existence. 3 weeks into my investigation, I made my move. First, I compiled everything into a beautiful, organized presentation. Every text message, every tracked location, every late-night lie cross-referenced with GPS data, showing her phone stationary in his suite. I burned it all onto a DVD, old-school style, and created a backup flash drive. Then I did something unexpected. I didn't confront Louisa. Instead, I started working on our house. She'd been complaining for years that the place was falling apart, that I never fixed anything. So I fixed everything. I painted the kitchen, repaired the leaking bathroom faucet, replaced the broken deck boards, cleaned out the gutters. I became the model husband, attentive and kind and present. The kids noticed. Emma told me it felt like old times. Louisa noticed too, and it made her uncomfortable. She started watching me suspiciously, like she couldn't figure out what I was playing at. "Why are you being so nice?" she asked one evening. "Because you're my wife," I said simply. "And I love our family." The guilt in her eyes was almost satisfying. Meanwhile, I'd made contact with Catherine, John's wife in Dallas. I didn't tell her about the affair, not yet. I simply posed as someone interested in business opportunities with her husband's company, asked some questions, established a rapport. She was friendly, trusting. She mentioned how much she missed John, how these long business trips were getting harder. My plan was coming together like a symphony. The week before Thanksgiving, I told Louisa I'd found a new job. It was real, a position at a smaller plant with better ethics and slightly better pay. Not enough to make us rich, but enough to stabilize us. She seemed almost disappointed. That weekend, I told her I wanted to renew our vows. "It's been 15 years, I said. "We've been through hard times, but we made it. I want to celebrate that. Celebrate us." She couldn't say no without revealing herself, so she agreed, though I could see the panic behind her eyes. I planned a small ceremony at our house, invited close friends and family. I hired a photographer. I bought her flowers. I wrote vows that talked about trust, loyalty, and the promises we make to each other. The ceremony was beautiful. Louisa cried, though I suspect for different reasons than everyone thought. The kids were so happy, thinking their parents were in love again. I almost felt bad about what was coming next. That night, after everyone left, after the kids went to bed, I sat Louisa down in the living room. "I need to show you something," I said, opening my laptop. I played the presentation. Every message, Every location, every lie, all set to a timeline that proved beyond any doubt what she'd been doing. Her face went from confusion to horror to resignation. "Rudolph, I can explain." "Don't," I said quietly. "I don't want explanations. I want you to listen." I told her I'd already filed for divorce. I told her I had copies of everything saved in multiple locations. I told her that in our state, infidelity affected custody arrangements and property division. I told her I'd spoken to 3 lawyers who all agreed I had an excellent case. Then I told her about Catherine. Tomorrow morning, John's wife is receiving a package. Same evidence, different presentation. Photos of the happy couple, timeline of his extended stay in Fort Worth, your text messages about the life he promised you. His wife, by the way, has family money. The prenup he signed means he's going to lose most of his assets in their divorce. Louisa's face went white. "You can't do that." "I already did. Package is in the mail." "But why? Why would you destroy his life?" "Because he tried to destroy mine. Because he made promises to you he couldn't keep. Because his wife deserves to know the truth, just like I deserved to know. Because men like John think they can take whatever they want without consequences." What Louisa didn't know yet was the truly beautiful part. I'd also sent copies of the evidence to the hotel management, along with a detailed complaint about how their concierge was conducting personal affairs on company time, using company property. The Riverside Grand had a strict ethics policy. Louisa would be terminated within 48 hours. And John, his company's board of directors was very conservative, very family values oriented. Catherine's father sat on that board. Once the divorce became public, once the affair was revealed, John's position would become untenable. I'd made sure Catherine knew to consult with a good PR attorney. The house went on the market the next week. I'd already lined up a rental apartment for me and the kids, using my new job as proof of income. Texas law meant we'd split the proceeds from the house sale, split the debt, work out custody. But I had documentation that Louisa had been planning to abandon the children for her wealthy boyfriend, that she'd called them obstacles to her new life. No judge would give her primary custody after seeing that. Emma and Marcus took it hard, of course. Divorce always hurts kids. But I promised them stability, promised them I'd be there, promised them we'd get through it together. And I meant it. John's wife filed for divorce 3 days after receiving my package. According to the gossip channels Danny kept me updated on, John tried to run to Louisa, thinking they could salvage something from the wreckage. But Louisa wasn't interested in a broke, disgraced businessman going through an expensive divorce. She'd wanted the lifestyle, not the man. When that evaporated, so did her interest. John checked out of the Riverside Grand on a Tuesday. I heard later that he moved back to Dallas to try to maintain some relationship with his kids, though Catherine had already frozen his access to most of their accounts. Louisa tried to get her job back, tried other hotels, but the hospitality industry in Fort Worth is smaller than you'd think. Word travels. She ended up taking a job at a budget motel near the airport, checking in truckers and traveling salesmen. Not quite the luxury lifestyle she'd been dreaming of. The house sold in February. After paying off the mortgage and splitting what was left, we each walked away with about $30,000. I put mine toward the kids' education funds and first and last month's rent on a decent 3-bedroom apartment in a good school district. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Louisa used hers to get a small apartment and a used car. She had the kids every other weekend, supervised at first, then unsupervised once she proved stable. She was lonely, I gathered. Her family had been disappointed in her choices. Her friends had mostly been our friends, and they'd chosen sides. As for me, I focused on being present for Emma and Marcus. I helped with homework, attended their school events, made dinners, maintained routines. The new job was good, the pay decent, the work satisfying. I'd stood up for what was right and paid the price, but I'd also learned that sometimes standing up for yourself matters just as much as standing up for others. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Emma asked me if I was okay. "I'm getting there, sweetheart," I told her honestly. "Mom made a mistake, didn't she?" "Smart kid." "Yeah, she did. A big one. Are you still angry?" I thought about it. The cold rage had burned out long ago, replaced by something quieter, but more permanent. Not quite forgiveness, but acceptance. "Not angry," I said. "Just done." That was the truth. I was done with betrayal, done with lies, done with people who saw other people as stepping stones to a better life. I was done with being anyone's deadweight. Marcus graduated from elementary school that spring. Louisa came to the ceremony, sat on the opposite side of the auditorium. We didn't speak. There wasn't anything left to say. I heard later that year that John had lost his position with the medical supply company. Catherine's divorce had been swift and brutal, and the board had quietly asked him to step down to avoid further scandal. He'd started a small consulting business, was rebuilding from the ground up. Sometimes I wondered if he understood what he'd lost, if he ever connected his actions to the consequences. Probably not. Men like that rarely do. As for whether Louisa understood what she'd thrown away, I couldn't say. We communicated only through a parenting app now, scheduling pickups and drop-offs, discussing the kids' needs in brief, formal messages. She'd wanted something more, something bigger, something glamorous. Instead, she got exactly what she deserved, the consequences of her choices. I'd given her 15 years of loyalty, 2 beautiful children, and a home. She'd given me betrayal and lies. But in the end, I'd given her something else too, a lesson in how devastating honesty could be when wielded with precision. The kids adjusted. Children are resilient in ways adults forget. They still loved their mother, still spent time with her, but they saw the differences now. They saw who showed up consistently, who kept promises, who built a stable life from broken pieces. Emma told me once that she wanted to be like me when she grew up. You fight for what's right, she said, even when it costs you. I held her close and hoped she'd never have to learn how much those fights could cost. Winter came again, a year after Danny's phone call had changed everything. I was sitting in our apartment, watching snow fall outside, kids asleep in their rooms. My phone buzzed with a message from a woman I'd met at Marcus's soccer game, asking if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. I smiled and typed back, I'd like that. Life moves forward, whether we're ready or not. The trick is deciding what you carry with you and what you leave behind. I'd carried my integrity, my love for my children, and my belief that actions have consequences. I'd left behind the weight of a marriage built on lies, the burden of loving someone who saw me as an obstacle rather than a partner. Some people might say my revenge was too calculated, too cold. They might say I should have just walked away quietly, taken the high road. But there's a difference between the high road and being a doormat. Sometimes justice requires you to ensure that those who hurt you understand exactly what they've lost, exactly what they've done. John lost his marriage, his position, his reputation. Louisa lost her family, her job, her fantasy of an upgraded life. And me? I lost a wife who didn't deserve me and gained something more valuable, my self-respect. The coffee date went well. Her name was Rachel. She was a teacher, divorced 2 years with a 10-year-old daughter. We talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing, and when she asked about my ex-wife, I gave her the abbreviated version. She made some choices that ended our marriage, I said simply. And you? I made the choice not to let those choices define the rest of my life. Rachel smiled. I like that answer. We're taking things slow, building something new on honest foundations. The kids like her, which matters more than anything. Emma says Rachel treats me the way her mom should have. Louisa sent me a message last month through the parenting app. It wasn't about the kids. It said, I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I needed you to know. I stared at it for a long time before responding, acknowledged. That was all. Because sorry doesn't rebuild trust, doesn't undo betrayal, doesn't erase the calculated way she was ready to abandon her children for a lifestyle upgrade. Sorry is just a word people use when they finally understand the magnitude of what they've lost. The best revenge isn't anger or destruction. It's building a better life from the ashes of the one someone else tried to burn down. It's showing your children what integrity looks like, what it means to stand up for yourself without losing your humanity. It's moving forward with your head high, knowing you fought back not with fists or fury, but with truth and consequences. Every time Louisa picks up the kids and sees them happy, healthy, thriving in the life I've built for them, she knows what she gave up. Every time she drives past the Riverside Grand where she used to work, she remembers the price of her choices. Every time she checks someone into that budget motel, she thinks about the penthouse suite and the promises that turned to ashes. And every time I tuck my kids into bed, help them with their homework, watch them grow into good people, I know that I won. Not because I destroyed her life, but because I refused to let her destroy mine. That's the real victory. Not revenge, exactly. Justice. Thank you for watching the video to the end. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. A playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to is now displayed on the screen. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.